Hey, Kane, what's going on? Rob Cesternino. Nice to get the chance to talk to you today, but of course, sad to see you go out of the game.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a dagger. It's an absolute dagger. But
Just like in Dungeons and Dragons,
oh,
another
you already
dagger.
got me. Look at that. Yeah, no, you're too quick on these things. But yeah, no, I'm happy to be here. Happy to preach.
Okay. Kane, so we saw a live tribal go off last night. Did anything change during the live tribal council from your perspective?
My plan didn't change. I don't think anyone's plan actually changed. I think that I sort of was a factor in that chaos because there was a lot of different plans sort of stirring and brewing throughout the day. And I didn't go to tribal with a ton of faith in what was going down. But then at tribal, everyone sort of came up sort of one by one and tapped me on the shoulder, and everyone's lies were very consistent. So at that point, it was basically like, either they're all lying and I stand up and just try and completely restructure my game, or I accept what's going on. So yeah, no, nothing actually changed as a result of the tribal, from my perspective anyways.
So, was there any particular reason why knowledge is power was very much on everybody's mind at that specific tribal council when we hadn't seen any reason to think that there was knowledge is power earlier in the season?
You know what? I actually credit myself for that because one of the things that I thought of is because everyone knows about knowledge is power, that even the assumption of its existence could be used as a leverage. So that was something that when I knew Jamie had an idol, I was sort of softly saying over the last couple episodes and couple tribals, being like, oh, we should be careful. Because obviously if an idol goes home with me, I don't really care. And if an idol goes home with Jamie, that's bad news for me. So I know that I was one of the people who kind of put that out into the media, and then, maybe it kind of bit me. Didn't really matter. But, in Survivor, you got to play based on assumptions, almost everything, like the knowledge is power. So even if it wasn't true, I thought if that can cause things to move around, it's as good as having it.
Hey, I'm sure when you watch season 43, you're like, see, it could happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's what I thought. I was like, oh, it is out there. Look at that. Maybe it wasn't my season. So I don't know. I'm none the wiser.
Yeah. Could you take us through your emotional journey with the Jamie idol that you got voted out of the game? I bet you felt pretty bad when it first happened, but then at some point maybe felt less bad.
Yeah. Yeah, you basically described the emotional journey with my amount of emotional depth. So yeah, no, in that tribal, I looked at Jamie and I was going to play it if she gave me a cue. I wasn't going to play it if she didn't give me a cue. At that time, to me, it was still her idol. And when I left with it in my soggy little sock, I was just like, oh no, what have I done? Like, not only am I gone, Jamie is in a worse position. And I felt bad for a long time. And it was the joke of Ponderosa that I had the sock idol. And I was banging my head against the shower, being like, why wasn't it played? But then eventually, the truth did come out and I felt way better. Like, I can't even, it was such a weight off my shoulder, Rob, to be like, oh, I actually avoided a walk of shame after Probe said that it wasn't real. And then I get voted out. So, worked out better for me, I think.
So the rice negotiation seemed very tense. Danny especially seemed like very much like, hey, like you better not, nobody better sit out of this challenge. Like, how tense was it on the beach for everybody?
Yeah, I think it was tense. I think that if Brandon had stayed, I think a lot more people would have been like, sure, I'll sit out for rice, like woohoo, like vacation time. But it was very much like everyone had their hands on the trigger fingers. And Danny did his breath work before the challenge. I knew he was gonna play, and that's his mantra. Like, he's out there to be a champion, but if people wanted rice, like, I wasn't even that worried about it because I'm a bigger guy and I had some reserves to burn. But like, people were skin and bone and loopy out there, like they really wanted it, and I didn't want to be the person who like proposed it. I was willing to sort of seal the deal, and work it that way, but yeah, I think it was very tense. I think that everyone was at a turning point in their game, which is an interesting time to propose rice, because what are you going to do with it? Only one person wins immunity, regardless if we get rice or not, right? So can you change this into a situation that favors you, or can you not?
So going back to the Brandon vote, how convinced were you that Jam Jam and Carson were with Ratu on that vote?
I was very convinced. Carson was an adopted child of ours, and he was an honorary RHAP2. Like RHAP2's information went through him, which obviously ended up being our downfall. But at that time, I was very confident that we had Carson and Jam. The Franny vote was one of the worst kept secrets on Fiji. Like everybody knew. I mean, even like we told everybody, and then there still wouldn't do a split vote. So that's kind of how it shook down. But it was a perfect opportunity for an offensive idol play like that. But I really thought at the very least we had Jam and Carson on that vote for sure.
So you said they wouldn't do a split vote, and obviously it didn't come together. Who's they?
So I think this is all secondhand, so I can't verify this. If you're totally interested in the truth, you might have to wait. But from my understanding, split votes were told. But for me, I was kind of trying to not impose too much on this vote. And so I was just, every time I was told it's Franny, write down Franny. So I was like, okay. And then I was just like, but they're split, right? Like surely somebody's not voting for Franny and we're splitting this. And allegedly, it was raised to even Brandon's attention that there was this vote, or that Danny was trying to vote out Brandon. But I don't know if that's true. I don't 100% know what happened, but at the end of the day, nobody split it. I think everyone just knew, like, yeah, we're voting on Franny and someone's organizing the split, but no one actually got to that step.
So we got to hear a lot about your interest in the Dungeons and Dragons this season. Were you happy that so much of that part of your life was showcased on the show, or do you feel like that you wish that there were other things that they would have also showcased?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the analogies got a little bit weak, I think, towards the end, but, I'm not too worried about it. I love me some D&D, I still do. I play many tables right now. And I think that also my season was very much a comedy of errors. Like I was close with Maddie and then she gets idled out. And then I'm close with Matthew and he gets taken away. And then Brandon gets idled, So I didn't have sort of those hard hitting Kane, the strategist moments to sort of anchor my game. So yeah, I mean, I wish that people could have seen me think a little bit more, because I think that I was, tracking the game, talking through strategies. I think it was up until the day that the blade hit my neck, I was somewhat aware of what was going on. But that, then nothing worked. So what are they going to show?
Yeah. Kane, so on the vote where Matt went home on that episode, we see you at the beginning of the episode. You're part of a plan. You're talking with Carson and Matt and Franny about, hey, we're going to blindside Danny. Danny's thinking about Lauren, that he gave Matt the fake idol. And so we're going to get him. And then ultimately, it didn't seem like that group ultimately went anywhere. Was that a real avenue that you could have pursued?
Absolutely. I think that I distinctly remember having conversations with Matt where I was basically like, okay, like we're good. Like we have a good board ahead of us. We have options. I worked very well with Matt. And we had assumed that the split tribal was coming. We had thought that any sort of permutation would keep our characters safe. And that was a very real alliance. Like me, Matt, and Franny were thinking together and trying to figure stuff out. But then that got swept away. We had to sit there and silently watch him die. So, it's hard to do. It's hard to strategize with someone who you can't speak with. Even when we were slopping down those PB&Js, Franny and I were just like, it's fine. Like we'll get to talk to them and then it'll all be okay. And then that conversation was never allowed. So there was definitely some different strategic avenues available, but Matt leaving sort of closed the Soka door a little bit, I think.
Did you have any input on what Heidi was going to do with her control vote when you were a spectator at that tribal council?
I like to think so, but also Heidi's going to do what she's going to do.
Yeah.
I know that, Heidi was very interested in talking to me. And so I sat down and my goal was to just keep it off RHAP2s, because the RHAP2 hit was there. If you put a RHAP2 on a RHAP2, Matt and Jam vote for a RHAP2 goes home, no ifs, ands, or buts. And so I was trying very hard for that not to happen. I was looking at it and be like, yeah, there's just no way. Like we can't do this. So, but at the end of the day, Heidi also, I think, had her own reasons for doing that.
Looking back, how much did it screw you up that your name came up at the Mergatory?
I think hugely. I think that hugely messed me up, because it made me have to I basically, like, I knew and did believe that Josh was going to be the primary vote, but like there's a lot more going on there. We knew Ahsoka Idol was in play. And all the Sokas are like, yeah, Josh can go home. It's totally fine. And then it's like, also you're the minority vote. Like, no,
Yeah.
we're not doing that then. So,
So
it
did
made
you
me
think
have,
that Soka could be playing you guys and like, yeah, sure, put the votes on Josh. He's gonna play his idol.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't, rumor was that there was a good chance that the Soka Idol was with Danny or Josh because Matt thought his was fraudulent. And I think that I was just not convinced that Danny, he literally did it 2 votes later. He knew where the vote was going. He disrupted it. I thought that was something that somebody could do. And I wasn't going to be the person who left pre-jury. So it made me have to activate, try and, flex my relationship, see if I could organize a vote. And then it made me visible. So if I could have just slept through that vote and just snoozed it, I think that I might have been in a better position, especially considering Jam like then Mafia boss and
Right.
hit everybody who voted for him. So yeah, I think it probably would have been better for my game if I didn't have to do that. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's not something that we had picked up on. That maybe that people thought that it was all ploy from Soka in terms of voting out Josh. So okay, so then did you have any idea that Jam Jam had felt some kind of way about his name being written down that night?
yeah, I mean, I didn't know he was like strategically slitting throats for
Hmm.
his own therapy. That was a little bit of a wake up call to me, because it was masked very well. But I had a conversation with Jam when we got back from the vote. I literally say my voting confession was like, I hope you don't go home. Like, I wanted to repair that relationship, but Jam's a smart player and he knows that, like, it's bad business to keep people in the game who are willing to vote for you. So I knew that it wasn't, I knew that we weren't best friends anymore, but I thought that we'd repaired a working relationship.
Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with Carson? It seemed like that you two had a bond, but then ultimately he's working against you on this vote.
Yeah, Carson was the first person I met on the island who really strategized like I did. And so we sort of had talks that were like Lord of the Rings, and then it was like Star Wars, and then it was like majority alliance, and it's like split vote, like we kind of like got there and we realized that we were thinking about the game the same way. Carson also, I anticipated, would betray me at some point. I didn't think it would be that early, so I was trying to beat him to the punch. So Carson was very much like a means to an end from my perspective, and also from his, that we knew we were working well together. We were accurately tracking the game. We could sit down and be like, these are where the relationship bubbles are at. These are where the ties are at. And we knew that eventually we were going to have to part ways. I think both of us knew that.
Kane, you and Brandon had like a really interesting up and down relationship where it seemed like coming into the merge, he's like, yeah, Kane, I don't trust him. And then it seemed like that you two were super close by the time that he went out of the game.
Yeah. No, me and Brandon had a very dynamic relationship. I know that he was not keen that I voted his name down at the very first tribal, understandably so. And we had like worked through that on RHAP 2. We had conversations, we would talk, we were sort of working together. But obviously he has in the back of the mind that I'm willing to vote his name down. And then Murgatory comes around, and from the picnic, I had both Jamie and Carson tell me that my name came up. And so then I'm like, why didn't that news come from Brandon? So that was sort of a misstep there where I thought that maybe Brandon was sort of trying to make calls for me from my perspective. He was sort of like, I don't think Kane's going to go home. He's just the minority. We threw him out as a vote, or the backup vote, right? But I think he was just kind of making that call without running past me. And I was like, no, they're not doing that. That's not happening. So, but yeah, we sort of stepped together and we realized that I think there was just enough common enemies to the end. That challenge was a very good moment for us, where as we move through each one, we kind of daps each other up and we're like, really, we should be working together. Like, look at what's happening out here. We're not priority. So I left on good terms, I'd say, with Brando.
How do you feel like this whole merge ends up getting off getting started, at least in terms of if Matthew doesn't get evacuated from the game?
Oh man, I think it's a completely different game, like fundamentally, because one, Ratu has an extra number, which is good money if we're going to play a try game. And then also, he was someone who I also had a very good strategic relationship with. Also, that guy has a real idol, which is like gold out there right now with all the fake ones ripping around. So I think that it would have been a very interesting player to introduce. At the same time, then Josh is gone. So who is the sacrifice for that pre-merge vote, right? So it would have changed a lot, I think.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Matt. I mean, Kane. Oh my God, I can't believe. I'm so sorry. So
Hey, it happens.
sorry.
It's the
No,
hair, you know?
yeah, yeah. Really nice to get to talk to you, and all the best outside of Survivor. Okay.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Rob. Take
All
care.
right, take care.